So yeah, I just want to talk briefly about the new National Park Management Plan. On this call, we'll probably know already an awful lot about it. Kyle, for example, I know has been very closely involved in previous iterations of the plan. But from our point of view, it's the most important document that the National Park Authority gets involved with. The development plan is almost on a par with it, but the management plan guides the development plan rather than the other way around. So it's really sort of our driving document, if you like. So in terms of producing this document, it is a legal requirement that we produce a plan for the sort of management of the national park. It was set out in legislation in the 1995 Environment Act, and I suppose the thing that always strikes me when I'm reading this now is, the legislation is very clear that the responsibility for producing this plan rests with the National Park Authority. But clearly it's nonsense to think that the National Park Authority on its own is in any way going to be able to manage the national park. Not least since the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority owns 0.003% of the national park, nor are we the body that spends the most money. You've got the local authorities, you've got Natural England, you've got the Environment Aid, all spend more money than the budget of the National Park Authority. So although statutorily the onus is on us and the National Park Authority has to formally adopt the plan and publish it and everything else, in reality it's not our plan, it's a shared plan, and that's certainly the way that we've approached it. So in terms of what it's for, in theory, fairly simple. I mean, again, many people will have heard us bang on about this before. There's only two statutory purposes for which national parks were designated. One is about conserving and enhancing the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the place, or in other words, the things that make the park special. And the second statutory purpose is to promote opportunities for people to be able to understand and enjoy those things that make the national park special. Full stop. But of course, we don't operate in a complete vacuum when we're thinking about those things, and nor does the legislation, because it also applies a duty to those two purposes. And I will stress that point, that the duty only applies to the carrying out of the purposes. It doesn't stand alone. But when we're thinking about how we're going to conserve and enhance the natural beauty and how are we going to promote opportunities for people to enjoy it, we are expected to think about how can we do those things in ways that also help to foster the economic and social well-being of local communities. And obviously, when you start to think about things like farming and you think about things like tourism, you can see how they are very closely linked to national park purposes. And then looking at the sort of stuff we've just heard about at Ravenston-Dale and the role of those of places, and converting a listed building, turning it into a community asset that provides services that benefit local communities. Again, there's some very kind of strong links to that duty there. So that's what it's supposed to be for. In terms of what goes in it, I suppose there's four main things. The first thing is there should be something that sets out what the special qualities of the particular national park are, and we have those set out in our plan already, and people will have all sorts of views about what the things are that make the park, this particular park, special. I guess the Barns and Walls landscape for me is probably one of the strongest things, that perhaps unique in this national park. And then we've talked about the habitats and species that we have, the history of livestock farming, all sorts of different things, the waterfalls that all kind of come together and produce those special qualities. Then we need to think about what are the issues facing the national park, what are the big challenges, what's the stuff that we need to try and do something about. And then finally, there's and I suppose the core of the plan really, and the bit that kind of stays alive for the lifetime of each individual plan, is what's the ambition for the place. And there are two elements to that: a sort of long-term aspirational vision, for want of a better word. I hate visions, but some kind of idea of where do we want to get to, what do aspirationally, what do we want the national park to be like in 2040, and then much more pragmatic, I suppose, and shorter term, what are the specific things, what are the specific objectives that people are going to sign up to and deliver over the next 5 years to make progress towards that vision. So that's what should go in it. In terms of who produces it, as I said, it's not the National Park Authority, although we have to formally adopt it. So we've set up this independent group called the National Park Management Plan Steering Group. Terrible title, still haven't been able to come up with a better name for it after 10 years. And the driver, I suppose, for the membership of that group is which are the organisations that do stuff in the national park. Not which are the organisations that shout the loudest and have the strongest opinions about stuff, but who are the people that should be expected to deliver the things that people have said they want to see happen. So we've got the local authorities on there. Obviously, with local government reorganisation, that's changed because we had the district councils on there. Now we've got the two unitary authorities, Westmoreland and Furness and North Yorkshire. All the statutory agency usual suspects, Natural England, the Environment Agency, the Forestry Commission, Historic England, and then the other main group are representatives of the key local business sectors that are most closely related to the statutory purposes. So that's farming, landowners, and tourism businesses. So that's the sort of makeup of the group, and the group is responsible for the process of producing the plan, actually producing the plan, agreeing everything that goes in it, dealing with the consultations and all of that, and then monitoring and reporting on progress afterwards. And then beyond that group, because you can't have everybody that's got an interest on the street, you have to have a kind of manageable number. But there's a much wider group that we refer to as the Annual Forum, which I think is about 450 organisations. All the parish councils are on that wider circulation. And I was going to say once a year. It's not always every year, but usually once a year we have a meeting where we get all those people together, and that's really about a much wider group being able to hold the partnership group to account. Are you doing the things you said you were going to do? So that's how we manage the process. I'm not going to go through these exercises. They're just a reminder for people, save you having to go to the website and look at the plan again, of what the current ambitions are for the park for the next up to 2040. So we've got things about landscape, being a welcoming place, wildlife, which we've touched on. We have an astonishing range of wildlife here, not all in great condition, but the potential is enormous on wildlife. Climate change, economy, and communities. Those are kind of the six themes. I'll come back to a couple of those in a minute. And then we've got these objectives, the specific objectives in there. And the steering group's been great on this from my point of view, because they have been absolutely consistent throughout that the objectives that were going to go into our plan had to be meaningful. So you would know at the end of it whether you'd done them or not. And I read a lot of plans that talk about objective number 1, make the environment better. Objective number 2, improve public transport. But nothing about what the scale of that actually is, what difference you're actually going to make. And what you end up with that is everybody can agree it because everybody has a different view about what it means. And it's only later on that you realise that actually you're completely at different ends of the spectrum on issues. So I think it's really important to try and have meaningful objectives. Getting to the end now, Chair, just to mention, there's a few new things coming into the process this time that we haven't, that weren't around as national priorities when we produced the last plan. First of those is a government that's been very clear with national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty that it expects to see a higher priority being given to climate change and nature than perhaps has been the case previously. I think our plan's pretty strong on climate change and nature. We've got 2 specific sections on climate change and nature, so no doubt there's a bit more we could do, but I don't think we've kind of missed the boat on that one. They've also said that they expect to see more focus on diversity in terms of the type of people that are accessing the national park and improving that, and also about the role that national parks can play in helping to improve the nation's health, because national parks feel like an underutilized resource at the moment in that regard. And we all know the kind of the mental and physical well-being benefits of just being able to go for a walk in the national park can do you kind of a power of good. government is going to set some targets specifically for national parks and AONBs that we will have to sign up to, in effect. And these reflect some of the national targets that are in the Environmental Improvement Plan that was published last year. So we are likely to be set a target for creating new habitats, increasing woodland cover, restoring peat, cleaning up rivers, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and one or two others. So that'll be really interesting for us, because they've never tried to do that before, and trying to do that amongst 40 odd different protected landscapes will be quite interesting, I suspect. And then lastly, the government announced fairly recently that as part of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, that they were going to include a regulation in there now to place a stronger requirement on the partner organisations to actively get involved in helping to write the plan and also to achieving and implementing the objectives in that. So, you know, that feels like a positive, although we have a really good group of partners on that steering group now who all do get actively involved. So again, not necessarily going to make a massive difference on a day-to-day basis to us, but kind of a good signal of intent, I think, from government. So I'll finish, I think this is the last slide, Chair, just to say, at the moment, we are working on the basis that we will be completing this update of the plan by March 2025. That's the kind of timescale, and starting with a first public consultation in January of 2024. I'm being slightly hesitant because we're still waiting for the government to publish this thing about the national targets, and we know they're going to say that they must be put into management plans. So we don't want to start and then find we get kind of railroaded halfway along by them moving the goalposts on us. He said, mixing several metaphors together. So I'd feel much more confident about that timetable if we knew what the government's plans were. So we're hoping to hear before Christmas on that, and hopefully we will. That first public consultation will be, a very wide consultation. It's not going to get into a lot of detail. Really, the question we're going to be asking, and obviously we'll be sending something to all the parish councils as part of this, is, what are the big issues that you want to see tackled in the national park at the moment? Are they the same ones as they were 5 years ago? Is there some new things that have come along? Has the kind of level of importance of some of those things changed? Is it, Green Lanes is a great example of a kind of issue that, 15 years ago was probably the hottest topic when you talk to people in the national park. Four-wheel drive vehicles going on green lanes, trashing them, and it just isn't that. There's still a little bit of an issue, but it's not at the level it was before. So things do change. Sometimes quite slowly, but things do change. So it's important to kind of get a handle on what people think are the big issues now. So that'll be the focus of the first consultation. I won't go any further than that, Chairman. But anyway, just to reiterate that we will be consulting the parishes on that. And as always, we do recognise that some parish meetings don't meet very often, and it's not always easy to fit with our kind of 8-week or whatever timetable. We'll always look at responses, even if they're submitted after as long as it's not like 3 years after the deadline. So, we will give people as much time as they need really to respond to that. And I'll stop there, Chair.